One should begin with the moment when my former life shattered. That did not happen back when I decided to say everything to their faces. I never did that, and not back when I screamed or sobbed. Scenes like that did not take place either. That night I am speaking of was quiet and utterly ordinary. It was a regular Tuesday that should not have stood out. My name is Wyatt. I am 34 years old. I work as a construction project manager and specialize in industrial infrastructure, dams, bridges, and hydroelectric plants. Such work means that you cannot be home for weeks at a time. I was married to Bryn for 5 years. Together, we were together for 8 years. She organized events at a first-class hotel downtown. My brother Cole was the best man at our wedding. He worked as a personal trainer. He is not a bad guy, but he always had money problems, and I always tried to help him, because that is how brothers should behave toward each other, isn't it? At that time, I was overseeing the renovation of a hydroelectric plant in rural New Mexico. It was a wasteland where the cell network only worked sporadically. My crew and I lived directly on the construction site in a shipping container. According to the schedule, we were supposed to stay there for another week, but we finished an important phase of construction 2 days earlier than planned. The boss allowed us to take time off until the weekend. I did not call ahead to announce my arrival. 11 hours of driving without a break, and at 11 o'clock on Tuesday night, I drove into Denver. When I turned onto my street, I saw that the lights in the windows were off. Bryn's car was in the driveway, and right behind it was Cole's pickup truck. I did not pull into the driveway. Instead, I parked on the opposite side of the street, 3 houses further down. I turned off the engine, killed the headlights, and just sat there. My brain feverishly tried to find a justification for what I had seen. Maybe his car had broken down. Maybe he just had no place to sleep. But at 1:30 in the morning, the front door of my house opened. First, Cole came out. Then Bryn appeared, wearing only my old college t-shirt. They stood on the porch, which I had built with my own hands, and kissed. It was not a friendly gesture or a fleeting goodbye. It was a real long kiss that spoke volumes. My brother got into his pickup, and she watched him go, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. Then she went back inside. I sat in the car until dawn. In the morning, I drove to a motel on Highway 25 and rented a room for 7 days. Over the course of the following week, I transformed into a different person. I returned home and behaved as if nothing had happened. Every morning, I kissed Bryn before leaving and said I had meetings, site inspections, and paperwork to handle. But in reality, I observed and conducted my own investigation. I studied our bank statements and discovered transfers via the app to Cole. Sometimes $200, sometimes $150. When I had asked about these expenses a few months earlier, she answered that she was just paying him back for groceries he bought while I was away. "He helps us so much," she said. "Yes, helps." I searched through her phone while she was showering. I am not proud of that act, but I am not ashamed of it either. The message history spanned 5 months back. There were explicit details and detailed plans of their meetings, which they scheduled around my work calendar. On Wednesday, he's back in New Mexico. Next Wednesday, we have a whole weekend. I deleted nothing, only took screenshots and saved them to a cloud she knew nothing about. Then I found a pregnancy test. It was in the bathroom trash, covered with tissues and cotton pads, as if she wanted to hide it. The result was positive. She did not tell me anything, but when I looked at her phone again, it turned out she had already told Cole 3 days earlier. His reaction was short. "Damn, is it mine?" Her answer, "I think so. He hasn't touched me in months." I did a simple calculation. Out of the last 8 weeks, I had been away for 6, only coming home for short weekends. The timing fit. The child was not mine. That evening, I came home at the usual time. I kissed her and asked how her day was. She smiled and answered that everything was fine. She said Cole had stopped by to fix the garden gate because the latch was sticking. I nodded and remarked that was very kind of him, because he is always so helpful. I cooked dinner, we watched TV, and went to sleep. I held her in my arms like I always did, but inside nothing of me was left. For another 2 weeks, I played the role of the perfect husband, loving, attentive, and caring. During this time, I meticulously gathered evidence: bank statements, messages, photos, and a timeline of events. I documented every detail with the same precision I used to manage million-dollar projects. Then came Sunday, and we drove to my parents' house for a family barbecue. It was a regular gathering, My parents, aunt and uncle, grandmother, Cole, and Bryn. Everyone acted as if nothing had happened. Right at that moment, I realized the truth involved not only my wife and my brother. I did not make a scene and did not accuse anyone. I continued to play my role while collecting evidence. But at that meal, I understood. Every single one of them knew about the affair. My father stood at the grill. My mother busied herself with the side dishes. My grandmother ran from her garden chair. Aunt and uncle brought potato salad. Cole arrived with beer. Bryn wore a summer dress that hid the early pregnancy she still had not told me about. Everyone acted out a normal life. And I watched. That had become my main skill. Cole and Bryn behaved cautiously. They did not stand too close together and barely spoke directly to each other. But I noticed their quick glances when they thought no one was looking. They were drawn to each other in the garden like magnets. But it was not they who made me nauseous. It was everyone else. My mother watched them too, as did my aunt and father, and they did not look shocked. They looked down on them like parents watching small children to make sure they behaved decently. They knew. I decided to verify this. "Listen, Dad," I said casually, a bottle of beer in my hand. "It looks like the project in New Mexico is being extended for another 6 months. They want me to supervise the next phase. They're paying extremely well." My mother's face changed immediately, showing clear concern. "Oh, honey," she said, "is that really necessary? You're already away all the time." Bryn froze and stared at her plate. Cole suddenly became absorbed in his phone. My father put down the grill tongs and suggested we go inside. We went into the kitchen, father, mother, aunt, and me. They closed the door behind them as if they were about to reprimand a naughty teenager. Father started first. "Son, we need to talk about something." I waited in silence. Mother folded her arms and said she was proud of my achievements. But Bryn was struggling very much with being alone for so long. Aunt added that Cole had helped her around the house and they had grown closer. Too close. Father cleared his throat and said, "It's over between them, but..." He looked at my mother. "Bryn is pregnant." I remained completely calm. "Congratulations. When is she due?" They looked at each other. My mother answered, "In November." I quickly calculated. That was 8 months away. For the last 2 months, I had hardly been home at all. Father continued, "Listen, there is a possibility. We don't know for sure, but there is a chance it's Cole's child." "Chance," I repeated in a flat voice. My mother reached for my hand. I did not pull it away, but I did not return her gesture. They assured me it had been a terrible mistake, but now it was all over. And this child, whoever it belonged to, was part of the family. And this problem we had to solve together, as a family. Then my grandmother came in, not noticing the tension. "Oh, good that you told him," she said, patting me on the shoulder. "Wyatt, darling, these things happen. Your grandfather and I had something similar in the early years. We got through it. That's what you do as a family." In that moment, everything became completely clear to me. They had known long before this conversation. They had discussed it among themselves, made decisions, planned this intervention, and considered how to handle me. My relatives held meetings to discuss my life, my marriage, and my brother's betrayal, but they did not invite me to those meetings. "I need some fresh air," I said and walked out onto the porch. Cole followed me half a minute later. "Hey, buddy," he said, sitting down next to me, keeping his distance. "I know Dad spoke with you. I just wanted to say..." I stood up. "I'm leaving. I have a long drive to that motel near the job site." He blinked in surprise. "You're not staying for dinner?" "No." I walked to my car. Bryn appeared in the driveway. "Wyatt, can we talk when you get back?" "Of course," I answered and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw them all standing there. Parents, brother, wife, and the other relatives. They watched me go, probably assuming that I just needed time to cool down and think things over. They thought I would come to terms with it. They had no idea what was really going on. I drove straight to Terrence's place. We studied together. He got his law degree while I pursued my career in construction, and now he worked as a trust and estate attorney. He was an honest person, and most importantly, he was not part of my family circle. It was 6 o'clock on Sunday evening, but the matter could not wait. He opened the door in sweatpants, a bottle of beer in his hand, and when he saw my face, He immediately asked what was wrong. I need a lawyer, I said, and I want to disappear. At his kitchen table, I laid everything out. Screenshots, bank statements, my travel schedule, the pregnancy message, and their family meeting. Terrence studied the documents, and with every page his face grew more serious. My God, Wyatt, what are our options? He opened his laptop and began checking documents, property records, account agreements, vehicle papers. It turned out the house was registered solely in my name, since I had bought it before the marriage. The joint savings account was funded mainly by my deposits. Legally, you can liquidate everything that belongs to you, he said, looking up. Do you want to destroy everything? No, I answered. I want to disappear completely, and I want to be certain that when I leave, they will feel the full consequences of their actions. Terrence leaned back in his chair. How far are you willing to go? As far as the law allows. He was silent for a moment, then opened a new document on the screen. All right, here is what we will do. I did not scream or make a scene at that barbecue. I simply listened, nodded, and left. In that silence, I made my decision. None of them would ever see me again. But before that, I would make sure they felt every single one of their actions. They wanted us to get through this together? Excellent. They would have plenty of time to deal with my absence. On Monday morning, I did not drive to New Mexico. I called my supervisor and reported a family emergency for which I requested leave. I had accumulated 8 weeks of unused vacation because I had always been a reliable employee and rarely took time off. Take as much time as you need, Wyatt. Family comes first, my boss replied. If only he knew. I sent Bryn a message. The project got extended. I'll be gone for a month. I love you. The answer came immediately. I already miss you. With a red heart emoji, I did not reply. By Tuesday, Terrence had prepared everything. We met in his office. This was now strictly business. He slid the papers over to me. House, solely in your name. You bought it 3 years before the wedding. Can she make a claim? In this state, no. That is separate property. You renovated it, maintained it, and paid the mortgage. It's yours. Next point. Joint savings account. Current balance, $142,000. Your deposits make up 87% of that sum. You have every right to withdraw it all, since you are the account holder. She could try to contest it in the divorce, but given the adultery and the source of the funds, you will win. I instructed him to proceed. We checked the checking account. Another $18,000, also from me. I called the credit card companies and demanded that Bryn be removed as an authorized user. I closed all the old cards and opened new ones at other banks. Next came the car insurance. The car Bryn drove was registered in my name, and I paid for it as well. I removed the vehicle from the policy and canceled it. I did not say a word to her. She had no idea that her access to finances had just evaporated. She did not know that the car she drove to work was no longer insured, and that every credit card in her wallet would be declined the next time she tried to pay. On Thursday, I met with a real estate agent in Colorado Springs. He was a young guy working on commission, and he did not know me or my relatives. I set the condition: sell the house quickly and discreetly without putting up yard signs. He assessed the market and my renovations and suggested listing the property for $650,000. Do it, I said. By Friday afternoon, I already had an offer from a cash buyer. $635,000 in closing within 30 days. I instructed the agent to accept it. I did not tell Bryn that I had listed the house for sale and already accepted an offer. I did not warn her that in 30 days she would be without a roof over her head. On Monday of the following week, the divorce papers were filed. I did not deliver them personally. I hired a courier so that a stranger would hand my wife the papers that would end our marriage. In that moment, I was sitting in a cafe in Boulder when my phone was torn apart by calls. It was Bryn. I rejected the call. She called again. I hung up again. A message came. What is this supposed to mean? I left it unanswered. Another 17 calls followed, but I did not want to speak with her anymore. I let all calls go to voicemail. 14 minutes and 24 seconds of recordings remained unheard. On Tuesday, I contacted my company's HR department to request a transfer to the Alaska branch. That place seemed extremely remote, but that was exactly what I wanted. The HR clerk checked the job openings and told me that 3 major renewable energy infrastructure projects were starting there. The minimum contract duration was 6 months, but the work usually extended to a year or more. Asked if I was ready to start immediately, I answered with a question about the timeline. I was given 3 weeks to prepare, and the transfer was approved. So began my new life in a different state. On Wednesday morning, my phone was literally torn apart by notifications. 12 calls came in from my mother, 8 from my father, and 23 from Cole. Even my aunt and grandmother tried to reach me. The voicemails piled up, but I ignored them and just watched the notification counter rise. Text messages poured in. Mom begged me to call back. Dad called my behavior extreme and demanded an immediate conversation. Cole asked me to pick up, and Bryn insisted that I could not just disappear and demanded explanations about the child. I deleted each message without even finishing reading it. At the phone store, I bought a new device and changed my number, activating it right in the parking lot. I kept the old phone and put it in a drawer, only checking it occasionally to see their futile attempts to reach me. From Thursday to Saturday, I packed my things. Into my single suitcase went clothes, expensive tools I had accumulated in 15 years of construction work, my laptop, and important documents. Birth certificate, social security card, and passport. Everything else, furniture, dishes, photos, and decorative items, stayed in the house. None of it was necessary because every object seemed poisoned by memories of a life built on lies. On Saturday evening, I left a note on the kitchen table. The house sale will be closed in 23 days. You must move out by then. No signature, no explanations, no harsh words, just dry facts. At 3 o'clock on Sunday morning, I loaded the truck and took one last look at the house. The porch I had built with my own hands, the windows I had replaced, and the garden Bryn had planted in the first summer no longer mattered. I drove north. Denver disappeared in the rearview mirror as the sun began to rise behind me. I did not look back once. The route to Alaska was 2,300 miles. I had 3 weeks before work started, enough time to transform into someone they would never find. I did not seek reconciliation or open conflict. I simply erased myself from their existence as effectively as I managed construction projects. They had wanted to solve problems as a family, and now they had to cope with my absence. In the North, I realized that the best revenge is not actively striking against the perpetrators, but ceasing all help for them. Alaska consumed me completely. I arrived in Anchorage on Wednesday. Despite the late spring, it was cold, and the mountains and endless sky seemed more majestic than anything I had seen in Colorado. The air felt different here. It was clean and untouched. At the motel, I felt a long-desired peace. There were still 2 weeks until the start of work, but I contacted my supervisor and offered to start immediately. I was sent to inspect a pipeline in a remote area. It was the work of my dreams. A secluded camp, 12-hour shifts, and no cell service for 50 miles in any direction. In the crew of 15, no one was talkative. We worked, ate, and slept. At night, I listened to the absolute silence, where there was no room for traffic noise or neighbors. 6 weeks later, I returned to Anchorage to civilization and the internet. When I turned on my old phone, I found 394 unread messages and 183 missed calls. I did not open them, just scrolled through the list of names. Mom, Dad, Cole, Bryn, Linda, Uncle Frank. They were still trying. I turned the device off again and put it back in the drawer. My lawyer informed me that the divorce was progressing. Bryn's lawyer insisted on a personal meeting, but I refused any negotiations. The terms were clear. She either signed the papers or not. The house was sold and my share was $590,000 after all fees. Earlier, that sum would have meant a lot to me. Now it was just a number in an account. Bryn moved in with Cole, which did not surprise me at all. For 3 months in Alaska, I checked the old phone less and less often. First once a week, then once a month. The messages became less angry and more desperate. Cole begged me to give a sign that I was alive, and my mother wrote that my father could not sleep from worry. Bryn sent a photo of a newborn boy and admitted that I probably would not see him, but she felt it was right to inform me of his birth. I looked at the picture for 5 seconds, tried to summon some emotion inside me, but felt nothing and deleted the message. 4 months after my departure, the lawyer informed me of the results of the court-ordered DNA test. With a probability of 99.77%, Cole was the father of the child. That freed me completely from child support and custody obligations. The divorce was granted on the grounds of her adultery, and I emerged from the situation completely free. My relatives tried various ways to find me. A private investigator called my former employer, but they refused to disclose my transfer location. Someone created fake social media profiles to obtain information from my university friends, but they either ignored the requests or honestly answered that they knew nothing. Letters from my aunt, sent to my old work address, came back. On the internet, there was no mention of my new whereabouts. I became a ghost. After 6 months, the divorce was final. I signed the papers, which were sent to my P.O. box in Anchorage, and erased Bryn from my life for good. My new project was in Fairbanks. It involved installing renewable energy systems for an eco-friendly housing complex. I rented a small house outside the city with minimal furnishings. One evening, I met Freya in a bar. She worked as a wilderness guide. She was a blonde of few words, and I liked that about her. We had a couple of beers, talked about work and expeditions, without touching on the past. That evening, when I got home, I found 63 new messages on the old phone. My mother wrote about a severe decline in my father's health due to stress. Cole admitted that his life was destroyed. He had lost his job, was living with our parents, and his relationship with Bryn had become a nightmare. Bryn wrote of her regret. I read everything with the same indifference as before and turned off the phone. Soon after, Freya invited me to go ice climbing on the weekend, and I agreed. 1 year had passed since I left Denver. Cole found my profile on a business network that I had not updated in 5 years. He saw that I had read his message, but I left it unanswered. That was more eloquent than any blocking. 2 years later, mutual acquaintances informed me via my work email that my family was falling apart. My father had suffered a heart attack, my mother was seeing a therapist, and Cole was deep in debt. I answered only once. I wrote that I was alive and demanded that they stop harassing me. My silence was not a punishment, but my personal peace, which had become a prison for them. After 3 years, I bought my own house near Fairbanks, paid in cash. Freya moved in with me 6 months later. We lived simply, not burdening each other with the weight of the past. I took the position of senior project manager and led a team of 12 people. I earned a 6-figure income and enjoyed well-earned respect. I learned about the fate of my former relatives only occasionally through my lawyer. Cole worked in a sporting goods store, had lost his trainer certification, and Bryn worked as an assistant hotel manager. My father and mother remained ill. On the old phone, which now lay in the nightstand drawer, the messages became utterly hopeless. Bryn wrote that her 2-year-old son looked like Cole on the outside, but in character, he was just as stubborn and quiet as I had been. Cole hardly saw his child and paid only minimal support. He complained of loneliness and that women left him as soon as they learned of his deed. My mother wrote that my father constantly thought of me and asked himself whether I was happy. I deleted these entries one by one. When Freya asked me if I missed them, I answered honestly that I missed the image of the family I once had, but not the people who betrayed me. In the 4th year, my aunt sent me a letter to my P.O. box. Somehow she had managed to locate it. She informed me that my father had been diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. He was undergoing chemotherapy, but the doctors gave no guarantees. My mother was desperate, and Cole could not cope with his life at all anymore. My aunt did not ask for forgiveness for them. She only wanted me to know what was happening to the family I had left behind, simply so that I knew. I read it twice, then put it in the drawer. I did not reply. 6 months passed. Then another letter came. This time I recognized my mother's handwriting. She wrote that my father was dying. He had 6 months left, maybe less. He wanted to see me once more before his death, not to beg for forgiveness, but just to look at me and make sure I was doing well. She begged me, "Please, Wyatt, whatever we have done, do not punish him like this. He is your father." I stared at those lines for a full hour. When Freya returned from her expedition, she found me sitting at the kitchen table. She asked what had happened. I answered that my father had cancer and was dying. She asked the question that hung in the air. Will you go to him? I did not know. Soon after, my profile on that business network became active again. Cole had found me there a few years earlier, but had not written again after the first attempt. Now a new message came. He admitted that I probably would not read this, but he had to try. Dad is dying. Mom is desperate. Cole wrote that he had destroyed everything. My life, his own, our family. He thought about it every day. His child asked why he had no uncle like other children, and Cole could not find words to explain. He did not ask me to come back, only to give a sign that I was alive. Just one word. The message remained marked as read, but I did not open it. That was harder than blocking or answering. Just emptiness. 8 months after the diagnosis, Terrence called. He had learned from a colleague that my father was already in hospice. It was a matter of weeks or even days. I answered briefly. Terrence tried to appeal to my conscience, but I reminded him that I paid him to handle my legal affairs, not to act as a mentor. With that, we ended the call. 3 days later, another letter came. My father's handwriting was shaky, almost illegible. I sat on the porch while snow fell around me and winter arrived in Alaska. I opened the envelope. I read it once, then a second time. Son, I am writing this because the doctors are giving me weeks, not months. I do not expect you to answer or for it to matter to you, but I have to say it. I failed you, as a father and as a man. When you needed my support, I chose comfort over courage. I chose to preserve the appearance of a family instead of doing the right thing. Now I understand that I lost you on the day I asked you to forgive Cole before he had even earned it. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not worthy of it. I just want you to know. You were right about everything. I am sorry. I love you and will always love you, even if we never see each other again. Dad. My hands trembled. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something. I sat there while the sun set and the temperature dropped, and the letter fluttered in my fingers. Freya opened the door and asked if I did not want to come inside. I said that my father was dying. She knew. I had told her last week. I added that he had sent me a letter. She sat down next to me, without touching the paper or asking to hear it read aloud. She only asked what I intended to do. I looked at the mountains, at the snow, at this vast empty landscape that had become my home, and answered that I did not know. 2 days later, I stood in the kitchen, phone in hand. A single call would have ended 4 years of silence. But what could I have said? That I forgave him? That was not true. That I understood everything? No. That everything was fine? That would have been a lie. Freya watched me from the doorway. She said, if I had to go, then go, she would wait. And if I stayed, she would still be there for me. I put the phone away. I decided not to go. I read my father's letter once more, walked to the wood stove, and opened the door. They wanted a resolution to the story. They wanted me to break down. They expected a final scene, a dramatic goodbye, a moment when I would return and we would all cry and hug each other, pretending that 4 years of betrayal could be erased by deathbed apologies. But the person they were looking for had disappeared in that bedroom 4 years ago. I was no longer that Wyatt, and ghosts do not visit hospitals. I held the letter over the flame and watched the edges curl. The paper turned brown, then black. The words turned to ash. Freya did not try to stop me. When everything had burned, I closed the stove and went to sleep. 3 weeks later, Terrence called again. My father had died yesterday morning. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. My mother hoped for my presence, but I declined. Terrence accepted it in silence and promised to note that I had been informed. I spent Saturday building a new deck behind the house. Freya helped me. We did not talk about the funeral taking place 2,300 miles away. We just worked, measuring, sawing, hammering nails. By evening, the deck was finished. I stood on it, looked at the mountains, and felt only muscle fatigue and the freshness of the air. On Monday, Terrence forwarded an email from my mother. She asked him to send it, although he could not guarantee I would read it. Curiosity won, and I opened the message. She wrote that she had known I would be absent, but when she stood at the casket, she could not stop thinking that she had lost 2 beloved men, one to death, the other to her own mistake. Cole spoke at the ceremony. He cried and said he would give anything to undo what had happened. Bryn also came. She brought my nephew. He was already 5 years old. My mother wrote that the boy looked like Cole, but behaved like me, just as stubborn and quiet. She admitted that I had been the best thing she had ever created, and that she had destroyed it herself. At the end, she asked for forgiveness and promised not to seek any more meetings, because she conceded that I had earned my peace. I read it once and deleted it. That night, Freya asked me what everyone eventually asks. Did I regret not seeing him before he died? I thought about it honestly. No. People mistakenly believe that the proximity of death makes everything right, as if you have to forgive just because someone is leaving. But death does not change what a person did while alive. He chose Cole and Bryn over me. He demanded that I suppress my pain for their benefit. That does not disappear because his heart stops beating. Freya nodded and asked about the child, my nephew. I answered that he was not my nephew. He was the biological proof of the worst betrayal of my life. I wish him no harm, but I feel nothing for him either. Some would call that cruelty, but it is honesty. That boy has a father. A bad one, but a father. He does not need an uncle who wants nothing to do with the mere fact of his existence. 5 years have passed since I left Denver. I am 39. I am a senior project manager with a solid income. My house is fully paid off. Last summer, Freya and I got married. It was a modest ceremony, just the two of us and two witnesses. No relatives, no drama, just honest vows. My old phone lies in a box in the garage. I have not looked at it in over a year. There is no need. I wake up to a view of the mountains. I work on projects that matter. Clean energy, sustainable infrastructure. I build things that last. I come home to a person who consciously and honestly chose me. I have friends here, good people. They know me as Wyatt, the manager, Wyatt, the husband, the guy who can work with his hands and prefers to stay quiet at parties. They know nothing about Denver. I am not running from my past. I am simply living without it. People around me often do not understand my actions. They consider me heartless, say that one must forgive, and that resentment only hurts oneself. But they miss the core. Forgiveness requires genuine remorse. Not just the words, "I'm sorry that it hurts you," but the admission, "I'm sorry that I hurt you. I understand why you will never forgive me, and I accept that." My relatives never got that far. They apologized for being caught, not for the betrayal itself. They lamented the consequences, not their actions. They did not need my forgiveness. They needed my permission to feel better about themselves, and I did not give it to them. The main truth about revenge is that it is not like a flame. It is not loud or theatrical. It is ice, cold, silent, and hard. I did not destroy them physically. I simply vanished completely from their reality, and they destroyed themselves trying to fill the void that remained. Every one of my missed calls on birthdays, every absence at holidays, that is not punishment. That is a consequence. They wanted to get through this as a family, and I let them get through my absence. It turned out that emptiness weighs more than any angry word I could have screamed. 5 years later, they are still there, in Denver, broken, locked in the cage of their deeds. Cole still works in retail, lives with his mother, and pays support he can barely afford. He watches women lose interest in him as soon as they hear his story. Bryn works 2 shifts, raises the child alone, and carries the weight of what she destroyed. My mother sees a therapist, mourning 2 losses. The man death took, and the son consequences took, and I sleep peacefully. I wake up in the clean mountain air. I have a partner who does not lie. I have work that gives me satisfaction. My life is free of betrayal, poison, and chains. All that remains for them are excuses, guilt, and a shattered family held together only by shame. I did not win because I destroyed them, but because I realized they are not worth the energy revenge would require. Some will call me cold. Perhaps I am. But I am free, and they remain prisoners of their actions. They carry that cell with them everywhere. Every time they see my empty chair at the holiday table. Every time they explain to someone new why their son or brother no longer speaks to them. Every time they ask themselves whether I am happy, whether I am doing well, and whether I think of them. They will carry this burden until the end of their lives, and the best part is that I do not have to do anything to make them suffer. They do it themselves daily simply by remembering that I existed and that I preferred to build my life without them. True revenge is not violence, it is indifference, and I have mastered it perfectly. 5 years of silence, 5 years of peace. While they drowned in consequences, I created a life so honest and so far from their world that they became irrelevant. They wanted a resolution. I gave them absence. They wanted forgiveness. I gave them nothing. And that nothing, that emptiness in my place, is the loudest thing they will ever hear. That is peace.